Have you ever wondered what waking up as an insect would feel like? This nightmare is Gregor Samsa's reality in Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, a novella that explores the darkest corners of human existence. Published in 1915, Kafka's work explores themes of dehumanization, existentialism, and absurdity, challenging readers to confront the fragility of identity and the search for meaning in an indifferent world. My first encounter with Kafka's The Metamorphosis was during my teenage years, and while I clearly didn't transform into a giant insect one morning, I related to Gregor Samsa's profound sense of isolation nonetheless. Aside from interactions with a few close friends, I generally stuck to myself, yet was often teased by more elite students for how I dressed and behaved. So in some ways, I was other, like Gregor, and this connection sparked a lifelong fascination with Kafka's works and the philosophies they explore. Franz Kafka, born in 1883 in Prague, was a master of existential and absurdist literature. His works often reflect the struggles with identity, alienation, and social limits. And Kafka's strained relationship with his authoritarian father and his battles with illness and insecurity are also evident in his writing. And despite a relatively small body of work, Kafka has left an indelible mark on literature, with his name becoming synonymous with the absurd and the surreal. Ever heard the term Kafkaesque? The Metamorphosis begins with Gregor Samsa waking up to discover that he has been transformed into a giant insect. As a traveling salesman, Gregor's identity and sense of purpose are deeply tied to his job, which he can no longer perform. His family, initially horrified, gradually becomes resentful and neglectful, and Gregor's physical and emotional deterioration culminates in his death, bringing a sense of relief to his family, who quickly move on from his existence. Kafka movingly illustrates the dehumanizing effects of labor through Gregor's transformation. Once a diligent worker, Gregor's inability to continue his job strips him of his identity and worth in the eyes of his family and society. And his family's treatment of him shifts from concern to outright hostility, symbolizing the alienation many feel in a work-obsessed culture. And as Kafka writes, he was a tool of the boss without brains or backbone. So in his human form, Gregor is the breadwinner, the dependable son whose value is measured by his financial ability to support his family. However, once he becomes an insect, he loses this role and the respect it commands. Initially shocked and concerned, his family soon see him as a burden. They lock him in his room, feed him scraps, and ultimately wish for his death. Gregor's transformation reveals how modern society often reduces individuals to their economic contributions, neglecting intrinsic worth. Have you ever felt trapped in your job, defined by productivity rather than personal qualities? Oh, by the way, this is a great time to like and subscribe. I need 1,000 subscribers to even make a dime. But back to the topic at hand. The harsh reality of Gregor's situation mirrors the existential dread faced by workers who fear losing their jobs and consequently their identity and purpose. Kafka's portrayal of Gregor's plight illuminates the dangers of valuing people solely based on their ability to work. And furthermore, Gregor's physical transformation into an insect is a powerful metaphor for his psychological state. The more he is dehumanized by his work and family, the more he loses his sense of self. This metamorphosis highlights the psychological impact of dehumanizing labor practices, which strip individuals of their dignity and reduce them to mere cogs in a machine. Gregor's tragic end underscores the devastating consequences of such a worldview. And at its core, the Metamorphosis wrestles with existential themes such as isolation, meaninglessness, and absurdity. Gregor's inexplicable transformation is a metaphor for existence's arbitrary and absurd nature. Kafka's portrayal of Gregor's plight reflects the existentialist belief that individuals must find meaning within themselves in a seemingly indifferent universe. And this theme aligns with the works of other existentialist writers like Sartre and Camus, who also explore the struggle for meaning in an absurd world. Gregor's transformation is never explained, which amplifies the sense of absurdity and randomness that permeates the story. And this lack of explanation forces Gregor and the reader to confront the unsettling reality that life often lacks clear reasons or purposes. This mirrors existentialist thought, where the universe is seen as chaotic and indifferent to human struggles. As Camus famously stated, the absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. And throughout the novella, Gregor's isolation intensifies. His physical form makes it impossible for him to communicate with his family or maintain his previous relationships, deepening his sense of alienation. And while this isolation is physical, it is also existential. Stripped of his human form and social role, Gregor has a profound identity crisis. His internal monologue reveals his desperate search for purpose in the connection in an absurd reality. And when he hears his sister Greta play the violin, Gregor wonders, was he an animal? That music could move him so he felt as if the way were opening before him to the unknown nourishment he craved. And this longing for meaning amid the chaos is the central tenet of existentialist philosophy. Kafka's bleak depiction of Gregor's existence echoes Sartre's assertion that existence precedes essence, meaning that individuals are not born with a predetermined purpose but must create meaning through their actions and choices. But Gregor's transformation strips him of his social roles and forces him to a state of pure existence. He is no longer Gregor the salesman or Gregor the son. He is simply Gregor, facing a new reality. The novella also reflects the existentialist notion of bad faith, where individuals deceive themselves to avoid confronting the harsh truths of existence. Look at Gregor's family. They initially refuse to accept the reality of his transformation and later deny any responsibility for his fate. They cling to superficial values, distancing themselves from Gregor's new and uncomfortable existence. Now, critics have approached the metamorphosis from multiple angles. Structuralist and post-structuralist critics analyze the text's narrative structure and language. And at the same time, psychoanalytic interpretations focus on the underlying psychological conflicts, such as Gregor's relationship with his father. As Freud might suggest, Gregor's transformation represents repressed fears and desires, particularly relating to paternal authority. Now, structuralist critics often highlight the meticulous detail in Kafka's writing, emphasizing how the story's structure reflects the chaotic and fragmented nature of Gregor's new existence. The opening sentence alone sets the stage for the absurdity to follow, presenting a jarring disruption of normalcy. As Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a gigantic insect. This sudden shift captures the reader's attention and mirrors the unpredictability of life, a common theme in Kafka's work. Post-structuralist critics, on the other hand, might focus on the text's ambiguous and open-ended nature, arguing that Kafka's use of language destabilizes traditional narrative forms and meanings. They explore how the novella resists definitive interpretations, suggesting that the text undergoes its own metamorphosis as readers bring their own perspectives and experiences. And this approach highlights the fluidity of meaning and the reader's role in constructing narrative significance. Psychoanalytic critics probe into the psychological depths of Gregor's transformation, drawing on Freudian concepts to unpack the underlying conflicts within his family dynamics. Freud's theory of the Oedipus complex is particularly relevant here, with Gregor's transformation symbolizing his repressed desires and fears, especially those associated with paternal authority. And yes, untenable relationships between a male son and father have historically been viewed as aspects of the Oedipus complex. Gregor's father, a domineering figure, becomes increasingly aggressive toward him after his transformation, even wounding him with an apple, a potent symbol of authority and punishment. And nonetheless, this psychoanalytic lens also explores Gregor's regression to a more primitive state, reflecting his inner turmoil and unresolved conflicts. His insect form can be seen as a manifestation of his subconscious, where human desires and obligations clash violently. The tension between sons and fathers is a recurring motif in Kafka's work, mirroring Kafka's own fraught relationship with his father. This plea for acceptance and understanding underscores the deep-seated need for familial approval and the pain of alienation. Furthermore, feminist critics might examine how Gregor's transformation impacts the women in his life, particularly his sister Greta. And I have a video on that I will link in the description and also put on the end screen. Initially, Greta shows compassion towards Gregor, but as time progresses, her behavior shifts towards resentment and hostility. This change reflects the burdens placed on women in patriarchal societies, where caregiving roles are often undervalued and lead to personal sacrifice and frustration. Greta's eventual rejection of Gregor signifies her own transformation from a nurturing figure to a more independent, albeit conflicted individual. No works exist within a vacuum. The historical and cultural context plays a role as well. Kafka wrote The Metamorphosis during a significant socio-political upheaval in Europe. The rise of nationalism and the tensions leading up to World War I influenced Kafka's work, infusing it with anxiety and instability. This era was marked by rapid changes and uncertainties, with political and social structures being constantly challenged and reshaped. And Kafka's portrayal of Gregor Samsa's transformation and subsequent alienation captures the pervasive dread and disorientation that characterized the early 20th century. The burgeoning nationalism across Europe contributed to an atmosphere of heightened suspicion and fragmentation. Countries were increasingly focused on defining and defending their national identities, often at the expense of individual freedoms and multiculturalism. This environment of exclusion and xenophobia is mirrored in Gregor's experience as an outcast within his own home. His family's reaction to his transformation from shock to hostility reflects the broader tendency to ostracize those who deviate from the norm. And additionally, the tensions leading up to World War I created a backdrop of impending conflict and turmoil. The uncertainty of the times is palpable in Kafka's writing, where the characters contend with their own insecurities and fears. Gregor's inexplicable metamorphosis can be seen as a metaphor for the unpredictable and often irrational forces at play, disrupting lives and severing connections without warning. Furthermore, the novella reflects the dehumanizing effects of industrialization and modern labor, emphasizing the loss of individuality and the alienation accompanying it. The early 20th century was a time of significant industrial growth, which, while bringing technological advancements and economic opportunities, also led to exploitative labor practices and a stark division between the working class and the elite. Kafka, who worked in an insurance office, was acutely aware of bureaucratic work's monotonous and soul-crushing nature. The alienation Gregor feels is also a reflection of the broader social alienation experienced during this period. Urbanization and the mechanization of labor created environments where personal relationships were often sacrificed for efficiency and profit. Kafka captures this sense of isolation through Gregor's interactions, or lack thereof, with his family. The physical barriers, such as the locked door of Gregor's room, symbolize the emotional and psychological barriers that industrialization erects between people. The Metamorphosis has profoundly impacted modern literature, particularly within the genres of existentialism and absurdism. The novella serves as a social critique and continues to terrify readers by exploring dehumanization, existentialism, and absurdity. Through Gregor Samsa's tragic transformation, Kafka confronts the fragile nature of identity and the search for meaning in an often indifferent world. And while I once empathized with Gregor's loneliness and otherness, there's far more to this novella than initially meets the eye. Its philosophy is terrifying, not because the plot is so absurd, but because the absurdity isn't so detached from reality.